So obviously, as some of you guys probably know, there were quite a few amount of players that were delisted at the end of the 2025 season that I definitely think could get another opportunity going forward. And there's more than a lot of years, I think a lot of people get really far too caught up in the delisted free agency market and think that like every year 10 or 15 guys are going to get, taken off it and given AFL lifelines and could be potentially used for different teams. Now, as we know, most of the time you'd be lucky to have like, I think 5 delisted players genuinely get picked up. Like, it's pretty surprising sometimes when one does happen. Of course, though, there's a couple that I think could get picked up, this year. Again, 2 of them actually came from one of the worst teams in the game, surprisingly, which is Camden McIntosh and Jacob Blight. Obviously, Jacob Blight showed a pretty good amount in his very young career so far with the Tigers, but a lot of different rumors going around. Like, I heard someone say to me the other day that there was a rumor that Jacob Blight had some issues personally at the club. Like, I don't know if any of these are true, and I'm not gonna, I'm not even gonna really speak on what the issues are, but apparently they were attitude issues. Don't know if any of that's true. Whatever it might be, we know clubs are interested in him. He's definitely a young player who's shown a lot. Camden McIntosh as well, got moved on by the Tigers just because they obviously want to go even way more younger next year. And McIntosh actually played almost every game this year and definitely played good enough to get an opportunity next year. Those are 2 guys that straight away come to my head. But one guy who recently just got delisted who I think a ton of teams are going to be interested in, and we're already quite frankly hearing news here, does happen to be Ben Hobbs, with it currently being said that Collingwood is set to join Richmond in the race for a number 13 draft pick, Ben Hobbs, who is stuck on the outer at Essendon despite strong VFL numbers. Swoop Luke, the Collingwood page, said the Pies were super keen on the former number 13 pick last year, and he's just been delisted by the Bombers. A 22-year-old inside mid that's been playing widely out of position at the hangar, Moneyball pickup or go to the draft. So yeah, this is an interesting one, especially under the Collingwood thinking of things, because Collingwood obviously in the last year or so have had like this Moneyball way of thinking where they've actually picked up some really cheap options and role players and integrated them, of course, into their main team. For those of you who don't know what Moneyball means, basically Moneyball is a very famous Brad Pitt, MLB movie, which actually has the Oakland team in it, and they essentially can't keep up with all the other big name teams due to a lot of the big name teams just having infinite money to sign whoever they like. So Oakland and Brad Pitt's character kind of formed together a plan to actually sign very cheap players, but have them kind of fill these positional needs, to basically summarize it up, kind of connecting to AFL. Collingwood, of course, are paying a lot of pretty high players and don't have much salary cap, but still need to add role players here and there to continue to rejuvenate the team and, keep it in a contending state. Of course, last year there was a couple with, Ned Long and Tim Membry coming in. We've seen a couple players before that in previous years coming in, like Lipinski was a really cheap option at the time. Again, this could definitely be one here for Collingwood. Of course, though, Richmond are interested in signing him as well, and as I reported on the channel, for any of you who remember, Richmond were actually interested in Ben Hobbs last year before they went to the draft and did their thing. Again, Ben Hobbs would be a great pickup for Collingwood, but would have been a great pickup for Richmond a year or so ago. And what I mean by that is, Richmond, in my eyes, like, I wouldn't be too worrying if Richmond signed Ben Hobbs. Like, I think Ben Hobbs could still fit, obviously, in at Richmond. But I think that Ben Hobbs, if they were to sign him, they're about a year too late. Because I think the idea under Adam Uze's, of course, game style and system is to do what he was able to do with Melbourne in 2021 when he was able to win the flag. It's to obviously have, hard-nosed, contested, inside clearance players. Again, is the modern game trending towards that? Somewhat yes and somewhat no. I mean, Dimmer won his premierships with only Trent Cotchin and Dion Prestia and Dusty when he was in there being those guys. And Collingwood won a premiership with Tom Mitchell doing that role and De Goey being that guy, but they were mainly it for there. But Melbourne were able to do it with so many players. I mean, Viney, Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, the core three were all contested inside clearance players. So Richmond are trying to recreate that. They, of course, selected Josh Smiley to go alongside Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper, who already do that role. They picked Kane McCullough the year before. Lawler can also do that, but he's very clever with his hands and can also be an outside player if needed. The thing is, I think, for Richmond going forward is they have already a lot of inside contested clearance players. If you were to ask me, I believe they would need to add some class or add an inside contested guy who has the class, very similar to what a Sam Lawler, is and what a Dusty was. The thing with Richmond, though, is I think they desperately need speed in that midfield, and Ben Hobbs, one of the big, issues with his game now for a minute has been, for his height, he is not really that quick. And Richmond already have a guy who, at the time making this video, I'm unsure whether he will be a Tiger going forward, in Tyler Sonsi, who is he's a good player, realistically, for his height. He's just not quick, and it hurts his game so much, especially playing in a Richmond team that's already really not quick in that midfield. So if you add a Ben Hobbs, it doesn't really add to anything that they need. They've got the contested and clearance players, and they may even draft another one this year who also brings with him that skill side of things. But they need the speed as well coming in, and the class, which I'm not too sure if Ben Hobbs has. He definitely doesn't have the speed. His class can be a little bit of a question. If I was Richmond, I wouldn't go for him. But if I was Collingwood, this would be a great pickup. Because realistically, Collingwood, I think, are looking at where their inside clearance players are at. They had Tom Mitchell when they won the flag. De Goey was pretty good at that, but I don't know. De Goey is kind of a shell of his former self at the moment. He's had a ton of injuries, so let's see if he can get back to it. Long filled in a very good positional need for the Pies. But honestly, Dacos, when he plays in the inside, he's not really the guy who goes in and gets the hard ball. He usually sits on the outside. Josh Dacos is similar. Pendlebury in his old age is very similar to that as well when he goes on the inside. Jack Crisp, I don't know if it's just me, but I don't feel like he's as contested of a player as what he used to be. These players are all so much up there in age now. You can't expect them to be destroying their bodies in the middle like they used to. But they were able to find Long to kind of do it, for this year. Maybe bringing in another guy in a Ben Hobbs would actually be a very good idea, especially considering he's young and Collingwood have the speed. They've got the class, which I question about, Ben Hobbs. What we know Ben Hobbs can do is he's a pretty good contested inside clearance player, which I actually think Collingwood really need, especially considering they just moved on from Tom Mitchell, who his body had been torched with injuries and it just got up there in age. I feel like they could use another guy here, and why not go for a very young and nice prospect in a Ben Hobbs? I don't see why you wouldn't, and I think if someone could get the best ability out of him, it could very well be Craig McRae. So, of course, I'd very much love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Do you guys think that, Collingwood should go for Ben Hobbs? Should they not? I definitely would really like to know. Should the Tigers maybe look at him? I'm not really too sure. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below where you think he should sign. Will Essendon regret moving him on? Let me know down below. But, of course, subscribe to the channel for all those AFL content and news. My gaming/movie channel will also be getting a link down below. Go check them all out. But yeah, as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.